take from my bed to the floor. 5, 6, 7, 8. Will today be rough or will today be great? 9, 10, 11, 12. Lately I've been going through hell. 13, 14, 15, 16. Today's the day. Are you coming? Are you sick of being normal? I'm sick of being average. I'm sick of being mortal. I'm about to be a savage. I see a lot of things that I want, I will have them. I got a new mindset that I just established. I'll march through the cold with the nails on the pavement. I'll shovel that coal just to get out the basement. My story will be told, helping others make changes. I'll be so bold, they will watch in amazement.
Am I gonna face it? Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time to take it. Am I gonna face it? Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time to take it.
Foot up on the pedal, pushing hard to the metal. Make a deal with the devil, channel rage through my vessel into something that is special. Energy of a rebel, going up a level. I just wanna be greatness. I could feel changes, turn a new page and tie up my laces. I will be the bravest, break out of my cages. I will not be nameless, I will not be aimless.
Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time to take it. Am I gonna face it? Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time to take it.
What is going on, guys? What is going on? Welcome back to the Locked In Podcast, episode 234, Thanksgiving Eve. Doing it Wednesday this week, guys, instead of Thursday, obviously, with the Thanksgiving holiday. First and foremost, before I even introduce the topic, I want to introduce first-time guest to the podcast, Nate. Hey guys, sorry about that. I think it's like 234 episodes in, and I don't think I've ever had my Wi-Fi shut down on a live stream. But my bad, guys. So I just wanted to. Me and Nate were just saying, must be the enemy trying to disrupt what we got going on here. But anyway, guys, just want to welcome in, as I was saying, before I was cut out here. Welcome in first time guest to the podcast, my brother Nate Evans. Nate, I actually met through a connect group, a men's group through Fusion Church in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. So just want to welcome him in. Thanks for taking the time, Nate, to come on the pod. Appreciate you, bro. Oh, I don't think I can hear
Oh, my
you.
fault. Am I still muted?
Oh, you're good now. You're good.
There we go.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah, no, I was saying thanks, man. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. I know it's been a little while coming. Thank you for your patience. Excited to, have this conversation.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So the topic for tonight, guys, is vulnerability in men. The importance of it is something that's it's not talked about enough. It's definitely a very, very important thing. And then like the subtopic to that is becoming a stable, secure presence for your wife and for your kids. And that's okay if you don't if you're not married, you don't have kids yet. This could still be a very informative episode. If you plan to marry, plan to have kids. So appreciate anybody who's watching out there. I'll actually introduce. I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself, Nate. But before I do, I'll just give the quick rundown every single time. So if you're watching on YouTube, guys, and you're not already subscribed, make sure you click that subscribe button, hit that little notification bell in the corner, turn those notifications on, especially if you like content related to either personal growth or sports. I would say it's like 90% personal growth here. Sometimes we sprinkle in sports here and there. It's a Philly-based podcast. If you like that type of content, you definitely want to subscribe, hit that notification bell. We release episodes typically every Thursday around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're watching on Facebook, I'm assuming you're already part of the community, so thank you for that. Just like on YouTube, though, hit that like button. Really, really helps us out with the algorithm, guys. If you want to comment in on YouTube, I can throw your comments up on the screen. On Facebook, I have my Facebook to the side here. I have to read them out loud due to meta privacy concerns, but I can still read your comments out loud here on the stream. So comment in, join the discussion, guys. Always appreciate that on this end. And just sit back, relax, and enjoy the pod, guys. So Nate, I guess you could just start by like telling everybody a little bit about yourself, man. Just your background, everything like that, like what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm a husband and a father, mental health advocate, entrepreneur. Some would say professional speaker. That's what I do full time. Also, the executive director of Prayer Warriors Global, which is a global men's ministry, and also a coach as well. And my day-to-day work looks like helping men, empowering men, coaching men, counseling men. And yeah, I've been very fortunate to do this work. I started speaking back in end of 2018, and been doing it ever since. Traveling the country, been very fortunate to do a TEDx talk and share platforms with other different individuals, and travel this world, man. It's been beautiful.
I love that, man. And that was like the ultimate goal when you went into like that, like kind of just to help men. That was the ultimate goal.
No, that was actually the goal over the last year. That was not the goal ultimately. It was to share my story. It was to empower people to have more conversations around mental health. And that's what I did for several years. That was my focus. But this year, I had this burden for probably like 2 years for men. But for me, I didn't understand how it would equate to me building a business. I just didn't feel qualified. I'm a young father. I just didn't feel like I was the person to do it, but I had this heavy burden towards the end of last year. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm supposed to be like really focusing on men and mental health. So I came into January with that focus, and I kind of just stepped on the gas from there. And it's been an interesting pivot in business, but it's definitely fulfilling work.
I love that, man. So when we actually connected, you were kind of at the beginning of that. Like you were kind of at the start, because we connected in February. That's where we started.
Yeah. We connected in February, man. And that was a part of it too. It was part of that. It was like, I could have did any kind of connect group, but I decided I wanted to do one that was focused on men and really helping us and empowering us and encouraging us and helping us to realize, hey, look, you're strong. But this is the way that it needs to look, right? You need to be transparent. We need to develop a level of vulnerability. We need to create safe spaces. We need to do all of these things. We need to be able to express and communicate our emotions. So when you all caught me, I was in the very beginning stages. I wasn't even the executive director of Prayer Warriors Global at the time. I was just trying to figure out my footing. I wasn't even really making content like that for men. But that helped me a lot with my confidence.
I love that, man. Yeah, you've definitely grown a lot, man, because you have some great content. Yeah, I'll always a lot of times I'll share some of your content on Instagram because a lot of it I can relate to, for sure, man. Like anytime I can relate to something, I'll for sure share it. And of course, shout you out, man. But I love how you kind of started with your story. You started with mental health. Mental health, just in general, for anybody is so important. I'm glad that it's getting a lot more traction, but it does need to keep increasing for men. I know for sure. Us as men, we carry a lot of burdens, and a lot of times it's kind of taboo, right, for men to be vulnerable, pride and ego, a lot of times, or just social norms, cultural norms of how we're raised, how we're brought up, or we're kind of wired not to really speak on our emotions, speak on our feelings, communicate our needs. But in the long term, I always advocate for mental health on this podcast, but I'll always say that when you keep things to yourself, you don't express yourself, you kind of avoid the vulnerable conversations. Really, that just when you suppress your emotions, that just builds up, and ultimately, it can cause you to manifest other ways. Like outwardly, it can manifest as anger, frustration, and then that not only manifests in us, but if we're a partner, we're a husband, a father, that can manifest as it reflects towards our wives, towards our children. You know what I mean? So important to have those conversations and to be able to be vulnerable. It's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's super important. And I think it encourages other men to do the same. So that's one of my biggest things is to help other people. It's almost like you give them permission without giving them permission to be like, yo, I know how you feel, bro.
Exactly. When they see when men can see other men who are in like positions of leadership, right? Having those conversations as well. I agree. It absolutely encourages men that, hey, you're not alone. We all feel and we all have emotions. So, yeah, it definitely encourages those conversations, which are just so important. So important for sure. Um, I always say like therapy too. I advocate for it heavy for men because I just joined therapy August of 2024, so a little over a year and a half ago, and mainly I started it was more so setting boundaries in my life. So in my work career, I had no problem with it because I didn't really have close personal connections to those people. In my career, they coworkers and stuff like that is fine, but even like bosses, I was all right with setting boundaries. But more so, people that I had emotional connections to in my personal life, I struggled with ultimately setting boundaries. So I jumped into therapy for that. But therapy, it went down a lot of different avenues, and it ultimately just encouraged me to be more vulnerable. I have some of my brothers that are like, I'll tell them things from a couple of years ago that like I hadn't opened up about. I'm like, why didn't you tell me that? You know what I mean? It's crazy. And I'm like, honestly, where I'm at today is a lot different than where I was 3 years ago, in terms of
Mm.
having those conversations. So
Likewise, man. Likewise. I think it's important that we continue to grow in that space. For me, it's one of those things where I believe everybody can benefit from therapy, every man. But I'm doing my best not to like push it on men either, but I do believe we can benefit from it. But there's also a part of therapy where it's like, yo, it only works with as much as you're willing to share. Like if you're going to come in and you know what I mean? It's like you have to be willing to grow in that relationship and comfortable enough to share so you can actually begin to get the help you need. This person is not a magician. You know what I mean? They're not in there to fix you or do anything spectacular to help you. They're there to help you unpack and kind of create a roadmap of like, okay, this is where this was started and let's work from here.
absolutely. I said, it's funny. I said that to some of my boys too, who are a little hesitant about therapy. And I likewise, I don't ever try to force anything on anybody. People got to make their own decisions at the end of the day. And I feel like if you try to force something on someone's going to tend to not want to do it, even more because they don't feel like they're doing it organically. They're not making the decision to do it. So I say the same thing is yeah, that's a great word. Therapists are not magicians. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and open up, because you could go to a therapy session and just completely lie about things in your life and just completely mask and hide those things out of fear of vulnerability. And it's funny you say that. In my first couple sessions, I definitely held back. Like, I definitely did not, like, I wasn't super vulnerable. I was not super open. It took like the fourth session for me to actually really open and be like to my therapist, all right, honestly, I was masking this, and this. And even going into therapy now, I'm still a little, nervous going into each session, because it requires a certain level of vulnerability. What I will say is, after each session, I feel really good that, like, I went through that session. And
Mm,
I also tell people, I don't know about you, but my first therapist, that's not the therapist I've had now. I've had my therapist, the one I work with now, for about a year. But for the first 6 months, I was working with somebody else. And not we had some scheduling conflicts, but not just that. I didn't feel like I fully vibed with that therapist. And I always tell men that too. Like, some of my brothers, like, even if you go to therapy and you don't feel like you vibe with that therapist, that's okay. There's always other therapists out there. So don't just think because the first therapist that you found wasn't really, your speed or your vibe or whatever. Um, don't let that stop you.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Because I'm on my third therapist, so I can relate. Don't let it stop you. It's like a shoe. You know what I mean? It's like just keep going until you find the one that's your fit.
Absolutely. And I always say is, like, through therapy and through those types of things, it just, especially just as you kind of open up and you're more vulnerable, it really does open up other areas of life. Like, if I can be vulnerable with my therapist, it led me to be vulnerable with people in my life that, like, I knew that, I could trust. It was more so like, it was kind of how I was brought up and raised. I love my father, I love my mom, but I grew up in a household. I always say this on this podcast too. I'm always transparent here. I grew up in a household where it's like we don't really express, like, we didn't have emotional conversations or like emotionally deep conversations like that. So it's like I had to recognize those patterns. I realized in my last relationship I brought those in there. Um, you know, my partner was trying to be vulnerable, but I wasn't as vulnerable as I should have been in that relationship. But also, I noticed it in friendships too. I noticed it with some of my close brothers, and that, along with me setting boundaries, was kind of the reason I went into therapy. And I was able to kind of, it's not even linear. Like, it's still a process. I'm still growing, still learning. I'm not fully healed from it, but
Right.
making progress, man. So I
That's what it's
love
about.
Absolutely. I love to speak on that content though, man, because it is just so important. A lot of men just don't think that they have those outlets, or they don't feel like they're going to be heard. But seeing somebody like you, a growing leader, speaking about it, I really do think what you're doing is great, because it's going to encourage a lot of men as they see that content to be able to understand that they're not alone and that they can speak up.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks. It's encouraging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then to the subtopic that I kind of have for tonight, guys, like I said, vulnerability in men, while it's important, it's not just for us too, because, like I said, it manifests outwardly. Like, we, as, like, men, like, if we're going to be, I'm not married, I don't have any kids right now, I do plan to get married, I do plan to have kids, but we can take out that, like, if we suppress our emotions, we're not vulnerable, we can take that frustration out on our partners, we can take that out on our children. And then also our children and our wives, right? Like, us as leaders, as in a household, like, we model the behavior. So, like, if we are shut down, if we're not open, we're not vulnerable, our children see that too. They see that, like, kind of like, how I grew up in my household. Like I said, I love my parents, but we didn't have those types of conversations. So if you are able to be vulnerable as a man, you show your kids that that's okay. Like, hey, you can be vulnerable, you can have those conversations. So we model the behavior that we show to them.
Yeah, yeah. And you teach them through your behavior, not necessarily all of your words, but also teaching them about who is it okay to be vulnerable with. I think you can be transparent with almost anybody, but vulnerability, that's a different level. And we got to be mindful of who we share those intimate things with. So I'm not like promiscuous with my vulnerability where I'm just giving it out to anybody, but there is a sacred circle including my therapist, where it's like, okay, these are the things I can unpack with y'all, because I can trust y'all to hold this and do the best and do the right things with this.
That's really important. That discernment is so important, because there are people that, it's unfortunate, but there are people that will use that vulnerability against you too, like as a weapon. So you do have to be careful of who you open up to. I do agree with that. You know what I mean? It should be reserved for
Mhm.
specific people in your life. I agree with that. I had some notes that I had here. It's just some little things. It was like, so some of the benefits of vulnerability in men are deeper, more meaningful relationships. It allows you to kind of be your authentic self. You don't have to wear a mask. And the people, they're gonna accept you, like your friends, even family members. Just because you're blood, doesn't always, mean you have a close relationship. But when you're authentic, your authentic self, put your partner, those people are going to be able to accept you for who you are. You're not wearing a mask. You're able to show up as your authentic self, and build those more meaningful relationships in your life.
That's true. Mhm.
Yeah, man, it's definitely so it allows you to have that authenticity. It improves your mental health. Like I said, with suppressing emotions, a lot of times it leads, especially as men, to chronic stress, anxiety, depression, things of that nature. Um, we just had in June, I think it was Men's Mental Health Month, but then we recently just had what was it, Men's Week, or National Men's Day. I think it was a week or two ago. But these are the things that are kind of stressed here. Depression, anxiety, we feel it just like women do. A lot of times though, men are more prone to suppressing those emotions and not talking about those things. And when that happens, like I said, you're not really fully pouring into yourself. And that manifests outward into the
For
relationships in your
sure.
life.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, man, it's definite. That also, like I was gonna say, you know, the group that we had, that was great too, like at Fusion. So like completely different topic, but I think it was called Healed Men Help Heal Men, out of Fusion Church. And then Nate, that's like I said, guys, that's how I actually met Nate. Nate led that group. Um, but man, it was just being able to build those connections. I had never been in a connect group before, and I know you had told me, you're like, not all of them are successful. So some are successful, some aren't, but we still kind of all have a connection. We don't see each other regularly or anything like that, but it is really encouraging to just see how, like, I'll get like a random text or a random hit up from like some of the guys in the group, Josh, Justin, Shelton, just it's cool to know that like almost a year later we all still have a connection. But it just goes to show, like, that I think that's a testament to the success of that group, that we were able to all maintain some type of connection through it.
Yeah, for sure. I still, we still talk to the guys. I know Josh jumps on our Prayer Warriors Globals calls. He's actually on there pretty probably every day now that I think about it.
Wow.
Um, he's always tapped in, listening in, because it's such a plethora of men from all over the world. 5 days a week, and we're talking, we're breaking down the word, we're praying. We have brothers speaking about different topics. So it's a great place to be fed. But yeah, we stay locked in for sure, and I think that's important. That we continue to check in on each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, like me and Rich is actually he's kind of one of honestly the co-host of this show. He's on here a lot. Him and my two other brothers, we kind of run this whole thing together. But yeah, I was happy that in that season I was able to bring him in too, because he was really going through something at the time. So it was perfect timing for it. But yeah, no, it's cool that like we all still maintain connection. I talk to I try to talk to all the guys where I can. It's cool to see them over at Fusion sometimes too. Yeah, man, I saw a lot of them guys went to the Brotherhood event the other night too. I wasn't able to make it, but yeah, I don't live as close. I live like an hour away, so I had already been down there for service earlier in the day, but it was cool to see the guys were all at that event the other night. That was cool.
Nice. Yeah, I couldn't make it out either. I actually had a birthday party to go to, but I did see some pictures of the event.
Yeah, yeah, same. So I love that. I love that they're doing things for just in general. Fusion does a lot of great things, but I'm love to see that they're doing like events like that for men. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty cool.
for sure. Some of the other things I had, just quick things, in terms of vulnerability, some of the benefits, personal growth and resilience. So admitting your fears, weaknesses, mistakes, it opens the door for self-discovery, self-awareness, learning. But vulnerability, it requires courage. So like you said, in therapy, you're going to get what you put into it. So like if you have the courage to have those vulnerable conversations and open up to a non-biased like third party, like that's what a therapist is. They don't have any type of emotional connection to you, so you're able to open up, but it builds that type of personal growth and that resilience in you. And then the final thing I have here is breaking harmful societal norms. So like I said, cultural societal norms, like traditional masculinity, it often imposes like the rigid standards that limit men, in terms to a narrow like range of acceptable emotions. I always say on this podcast that for a lot of men, they think it's like they kind of look at it as like unmasculine to like be vulnerable, to be open. I would actually say it requires a significant level of masculinity to actually open up and be vulnerable. It requires a lot of courage because you might get looked at or judged a certain way. But yeah, I would actually say it requires a little bit more masculinity, in terms of that. You have to face that fear.
Yeah, you definitely have to face that fear. And hopefully you can't hear my dogs down there barking
Nah,
at the pizza man. But yeah, it requires just different things, man. And again, I think it's imperative now more than ever because here's the thing. Men statistically die much earlier than women. If you ever look at an older couple, most times you've seen an older couple is usually the man that's in the wheelchair or banged up, you know what I mean, or hunched over. Um, and historically, we just haven't been prioritizing ourselves. And it's really, really important, I think now more than ever to normalize these conversations, but to also bring resources to the forefront. I think it's really, really important. It needs to be just as normal as everything else. I mean, we talk about sports, guys talking about drinking, they talk about guns, they talk about women, and this needs to be a part of that normal conversation as well.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's actually a good point. You usually do see those older men. Those are the ones who are hunched over, right? And it's because like a lot of times we're carrying so much, that we're not, but we're also just not taking that time to open up or take time for us too, which is important. Actually, the book that was recommended in our group, it was by Jason Wilson. It's called The Man the Moment Demands. It talks about this a lot. It talks about the difference between, standard masculinity versus like a comprehensive man. And in that book, he actually stresses something I really remember from it. It was about taking rest. Don't be ashamed to take rest as a man. It's one of the things that we carry so much, like especially as like leaders of our families, right? Like whether you're, a husband, a father, a partner, a friend, a son, whatever, we're always carrying some type of burden. We're always working, we're always doing this, and it's like that's great as a man. Like you're gonna, we're naturally wired to provide, we're naturally wired to be protectors, to be leaders. That's how we're wired, typically. And there's nothing wrong with that, but also being able to be in tune with yourself, understand when you feel like you're burning out, understand when you need to speak up for your own needs. Your wife or your girlfriend, your kids, they could be drowning too. But in a lot of times, this is something I had to learn, in relationships. My partner could be drowning, but then like in past relationships, I would sometimes not speak up about my own needs. Like if my partner's drowning and like, just because I don't want to overwhelm them, right? I don't want to overwhelm them or burden them because they're going through their own personal distress. But now, you look back at it, that's not healthy. You still need to, you can communicate your needs in a healthy way where you're not overly critical, judgmental, but you still speak up about like your own needs too. And you have to be able to establish healthy boundaries too. Um, a lot of times we don't do that. We take on the burden and we stay quiet. We just keep pushing, but ultimately it manifests outwardly negative in a negative like way, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and we don't have to take on that burden either. I think that's one of the biggest things. Like you don't have to take those things on.
Yeah,
I think if anything, we need to be more expressive about when we are at that edge, when we get to that point of like real exhaustion, that somebody needs to know.
absolutely. Absolutely. So it's like, and there's, I said, as a man, you're a husband and a father, you could still have hobbies, right? Go to therapy. There's ways that you can still have that balance in your life. And life can get very crazy sometimes, man. Every season is different.
Mhm.
Every season of life is different. There's some seasons where they're maybe a little bit less stressful, other seasons where you're completely overwhelmed. And just being able to acknowledge that. And I think that's important, Nate, what you said there too. We don't fully have to take on that burden. That's really, really important.
Yeah, nah, we don't have to, and we shouldn't. There's going to be times where you got to lift and do a little bit more, but sometimes that can become our identity as men as well. Where it's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm the guy who can carry it all, I can handle it all, and it's like, just because you can don't mean you should. So at
Right.
some point, you're gonna burn out, and that's not good for nobody you love.
Absolutely. We don't ask for help a lot of times, right? We're like, but it's like you said, we wrap our identity in it sometimes. That's
Oh
so
yeah,
true. That's so true.
yeah, it becomes our identity. It's like, yeah, I'm the person who can do this. I'm the strong guy who can, and it's like, man, you don't even know you're slowly withering away. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And then what happens too, a lot of times, even on the flip side, is a lot of times that happens, and men secretly want validation that they're not getting.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
doing it for validation, even though they may not be getting that validation. So now
Yeah.
this resentment starts to build up now, especially for the men who are married.
Yep. It's like a passive aggressive like resentment. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's because we have an expectation without communicating like our actual need. It's like, hey, like we don't even communicate, we just expect it. But when people start to see it as our identity, they become used to that. They become used to us doing those things. Like they don't give that appreciation. Like they become used to you doing that because you made it your identity. And
Right.
absolutely, it turns into like a passive aggressive like literally resentment, like you said. And yeah, man, it's like it's not a good place to be. I see it a lot in the older generations too. Not everybody, but a lot of the older generations, a lot of men, um pride themselves on being the tough guy, right? Not, you know what I mean, taking on all those burdens. But you see it, you just see it in those generations. I am happy to see that there are a lot more resources now. There's a lot more men speaking out. We do live in a good generation now where like there's a lot more resources than there ever were. If you look back like 50 years ago, there wasn't the resources that we see today. Like even 20 years ago, like compared to where we're at now,
Yeah, for sure.
it's a lot different. So I'll jump into so vulnerability, like how does that manifest in terms of like stable presence? Like if you're a boyfriend, if you're like a boyfriend, a husband, a father, those things that so the importance, like if you're vulnerable, it kind of helps you be able to model that stability, that stable presence. Because a lot of men, I hear this from a lot of women too. They say like a lot of men are not emotionally available. A lot of women say that, like that I know. They're with men that are completely emotionally unavailable, and a lot of times it stems though from where, like, childhood. Like that's where it stems. Like I said, I didn't grow up in that type of household, so it's kind of like me just trying to break those generational curses. Being able to, I always know, like when I have my kids, and when I'm a husband, I want my wife and my kids to be able to come to me. They feel safe enough and secure enough to come to me, with things that are burdening them, and I likewise want to be able to come to my wife with those types of things too. You know. Uh, so that's important. But in terms of stable presence, like what does that look like? Like how do you see a stable presence? So I would say number one, emotional regulation. So being able to regulate your emotions, striving for that emotional consistency, not that volatility that you typically see. So work on being able to recognize when you're stressed, and being able to find healthy coping mechanisms to deal with that stress, and not just suppress it, not just put it down, but ultimately face it head on. Important.
Yeah. I think I second everything you're saying. I think it all goes back to presence of mind and doing your best to train that muscle of emotional regulation or emotional control, I like to call it emotional fluency, which is really that ability to express your emotions without harming you or anyone else. But that requires you to be able to slow down in those heated moments when your emotions are starting to rise and you feel anxiety coming, or you feel like you're about to snap back. You got to be able to like pause, like, oh, all right, wait, I feel something. Hold on. Let me breathe for a minute before I react. You know what I mean? Let me take a moment. I actually had a brother on our call this morning with the men in the ministry, and he was explaining the situation with him and his daughter in therapy, and he said some of the stuff she was saying in therapy was like triggering to him. To him, he's just like, dang, you know what I mean? But he caught himself. He said, hold on, this is what I do. He said, I stop and I repeat the question so it gives me time to just breathe. So
Right.
he goes back and asks, like, hey, I want to make sure, is this what you meant? And then in her responding to that, he's getting time to regulate himself before he responds instead of just going right into reaction mode. So it's important to be able to self-regulate.
That's so important because we can assume when something's said a certain way, like, with our kids, with our partners, like we could assume or take it like to mean something that wasn't how it was actually meant. That's why it is important that's so important to self-regulate, be able to, but at the same time, be able to ask, hey, is this what you meant by this? You know what I mean? Because sometimes we're just assuming. I always say, this too is a lot of times our partners, they like, especially like women, they just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. They don't actually need us always to solve their problems. That's something that I used to do too. Like as men, a lot of times we're problem solvers, right? That's how we're wired. So it's like, hey, when they're dealing with an issue, hey, like I want to solve this, I want to do this for you. But a lot of times it's not even really what our women are even asking of us. They literally just want to be heard. They just want you to take the time to actually listen and hear them and ask questions and hear what they're saying, so that they can feel emotionally safe. Our kids too, a lot of times, like I said, I see a couple of my boys are close friends or fathers, and I see how they interact like with their children, and it's like, yeah, a lot of times it's just like taking interest in their life and just hearing them. Um,
Yeah, I mean, and men want that too. I want the men that are listening is like, hey, we kind of want that too, as well for somebody. Everybody wants to be heard. I'll say it
mhm.
that everybody wants to be heard, and I think it's important for us to be able to hold space for each other. Even in the Bible, it says to be slow to speak, quick to listen.
Yeah,
But oftentimes we're quick to speak and slow to listen. And everybody does want to be heard. Everybody wants to be seen. And I think people got to understand what that looks like with their relationships and their home. But it's important that someone feels heard because they feel important when you do hear somebody out.
absolutely. I agree with you. I second it. Um, I can tell just based off our conversation, I could tell that you listen intently, like before speaking. So you definitely model that for sure. And you kind of know when certain people, that's how they carry themselves, right? They listen first and then they respond. But we also all know people that are quick to speak before like actually taking the time to really listen. You know,
For sure. Yeah, I know a
so
lot of those people.
absolutely. So do I. So do I. I used to be one of those people, to be honest, man. So like, you know what I mean? Like
I
it's
think I was too at some degree. I was one who felt like I had to protect myself all the time and kind of get the word in. So I wasn't quick to listen. And the challenge with that is you don't allow yourself to get context on what people were saying. You just kind of you make an assumption based off of past experiences.
yeah, absolutely. A lot of times too, when people are speaking, we're already thinking about how we're going to respond before actually, but so we're not actually listening to what they're saying. We're formulating in our head what our next response is going to be when there's a moment of silence. Like, how do I, you're already formulating your answer, but you're not actually fully listening to what they're saying. So,
Yeah, and that's important too because it's somewhat disrespectful to the person who is sharing with you when you've already made up what you're gonna essentially you've made your mind up of what you're gonna say no matter what they say. And people
right.
can sense that, man.
Right. And what I would say is to people who like sometimes I think people like they fear silence. So what I would say is, just tell the person, hey, I just need a moment to formulate my thoughts. If it takes you a little long, that's okay. Like it's like I think a lot of people they're just not comfortable with silent gaps of silence, like in conversation. And it's like, that's going to happen from time to time. And look, there's nothing wrong with you processing, you know what I mean? It's better to process your response than to sit there and, already have your response, like you said, made up in your head. And, you're quick, like you said, quick to speak, but you're slow to listen. No, you want to be able to listen and then respond.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And that will strengthen relationships well, and that will encourage people to continue to be transparent. And for those that are being vulnerable, continuing to be vulnerable with you because they know that you hear them.
Absolutely. Actually, kind of even brings up my next point. I was going to say it allows people to understand that you're like a safe harbor, like a safe presence. So when you do that, you create that environment where like not just your wife and your children, but like friends, family members, they can express their feelings without fear of judgment and with understanding too, that you're listening, that you're actually going to fully give them your time and attention. Like I know sometimes people will call me like if like I'm working or something, like I can't have a full like for my career, for my job, like I need to be able to use my mind. I can't have a full like intentional conversation while I'm working. It would be disrespectful for me to be trying to work and then have that conversation too, especially if it's a deep conversation. Like, it's better. And a lot of people can't say no in the circus. It's like, hey, look, I'll give you a call back a little later. Like, look, I'm working. I can't fully be present in that conversation with you if I'm doing something else at the same time. So
that's real.
But that's an example for sure. I know a lot of people to do that. So it's like, yeah, it's like just be like, there's nothing wrong with saying like, hey, I'll call you later on.
Yeah, that's why my phone is always on do not disturb. Not because I don't want to talk to people, but it's like I gotta be able to focus when I need to focus. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That goes to setting boundaries. You have to be able to set those boundaries for sure. And then the other one I'm saying, this was going back to the conversation a little earlier. So being a stable presence, what it does is it models healthy behavior. So in terms of like a family, like your wife and your children learn how to handle life by observing you. They observe you, like you said. It's not even what you say. It's like how you move, like your action, like how you move literally. They observe you. And children, especially like young children, they're like sponges. Like they take in everything. They see everything, man. I know you can relate. I know you got a young son, so I'm sure you can attest.
Yeah, definitely a little sponge. He's like at the mode. He's at the phase where he's like the parrot. So it's like you'll say something, he'll just repeat it. And you're like, oh, okay, you really, you know what I mean? So it's like you just definitely got to be mindful about that as well.
Yep, for sure. They're literally observing you, like hyper vigilant of how you move and how you act. So it's like, and then as they get older, if we model healthy behavior, like open communication, problem solving, positive outlook, like our children can take that in too because they see it from us. So it's like, it's ultimately like how we show up each day. You know what I mean?
That's good.
That's why I love that you start each day with the word. And like, I think that's important. And I think that's a way that we can slow down too, to be more intentional with God, especially early in the morning before we even jump in to the chaos of the day, man. Like I do devotionals each day. A lot of them are with a couple friends. Like we do different ones. Me and Rich do one all the time too. Like we'll start the day with like a devotional or something. It just gives me that time with God in the morning. And it just kind of reminds me to slow down. Like, I've been guilty of it myself a lot of times, just getting up and just jumping into the day, like right away, jumping into work, jumping into whatever it is that I have on my to-do list for that day. And it's like, I didn't really take any time to really slow down this morning. Like you can make 10 minutes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's important, man. And people are like, man, I got to get going. I got to do this. But it's like that pace to slow down and meditate, that time to slow down and read and journal or just center yourself for the day is super important because you never know what's going to happen throughout your day. And it's like, why not take control of that first thing in the morning? So no matter what happens, good, bad, or indifferent, you're leveled out. You know what I mean? Your nervous system is regulated. And that's for me, that's what's the most important thing. Because I'm with the men on the prayer line at 6:30 in the morning. So it's like I got to be up early enough to get myself together while also taking care of the family. So that time is critical because that's my personal time to think my own thoughts, figure things out, and not instantly have to go into putting out fires and responsibilities.
Right. Right. That's important. And just more people in general, but men is specifically like for related to this, like we need to be able to do that. Like it's just emotional regulation, like you said, is so important. And a lot of us, that's like a foreign concept to a lot of men, like emotional regulation. Like what's that? But honestly, doing something like jumping into the word and being able to speak to like-minded brothers early in the morning, like to start your day, that could set the whole tone for your day each day, as you do that. Like it's something that gives you an opportunity. Cause like I think we had talked about this in the group, when we were in the group, when we were all in the group together. A lot of times, like us as men, we're looked at to what we bring to the table. We're looked at as
Facts.
providers, but that becomes our identity a lot. Um, we have to have identity outside of that. Like it's like, and we do. Like it's just about recognizing it. But a lot of times we're always we attach our own value to what we bring to the table to our families. It's like, and that's something that we need to be mindful of and be able to understand that we are something outside of that. We are still uniquely created, as men by God. Like, and women are created uniquely too. We're created uniquely, and we are more than just what we bring to the table and provide.
1,000%. Yeah, we're much more than just providers. Our value is in who we are, not what we do. And once we understand that, man, we can move with a different pace, enjoy life, move with joy, and not feel like we have to seek validation for every little thing.
Absolutely. I was actually just doing a devotional on that as well. It's just, yeah, it's we get caught up in that a lot of times, and that's, yeah, it's like we attach ourselves to that validation, like we were talking about. So we don't want that to be um, our full identity. But ways that you can be this stable presence. This is from notes. It's like this is just from people I know who are husbands and fathers, like I spoke to for the episode, and then also research too. So that's where I'm getting my notes from here. So being fully present. When you're home, be home. When you have that time with your family, be intentional. Put the phone down. Step away from work emails. Engage. Like be just fully in the moment. We're so caught up with this on the go type of lifestyles, social media, we always have our phones on us. And I like that you put your phone on D&D, man, because you know what I mean? That's important to silence those. We always hear those pings, notifications all day long. Like emails, texts, calls, like they're constant with cell phones these days. Um, it's so important to be fully present.
Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. It's important because I can't remember how I heard it said on this podcast, but essentially when you are fully present, you're showing that person who you're with and who you're talking with that they're the most important person right now.
Yep.
But if you're with them, you say you're with a girlfriend or a spouse and you're texting or you're doing something else, you're on social media, what you're saying to them non-verbally is that they aren't as important as whatever it is that you need to be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. It's funny when I was back, in single and dating, like some women, I wouldn't respond. Someone would be like, it'd take me a little bit to respond when I'll be out doing something. But I'm like, hey, look, if I'm out with somebody, like I'm out with people, like I'm somebody. This has always just been me. I always try to be present in like what I'm doing, the conversations that I'm having. It's like I'm not trying to be on my phone. And a lot of people are like this. They're on their phones texting or on social media, like when they're with other people. It's like they could be even just something that doesn't even have to be with a spouse or their kids. It could just be with like their friends. It's like at the end of the day, it's like at that point, what's the real point if you even get it together? You're on your phone the whole time. It's like there's no sense in it because you're not really taking in the interaction, if you're not present.
Right.
So
Very true. Very true. A lot of people think that they're multitaskers, but ultimately somebody's getting robbed of the time.
absolutely somewhere. Yeah, and I think it's obviously a lot more prevalent in this generation due to phones, the internet, social media, all that stuff. It gives us another outlet to not be present. It gives us another temptation to not be present. So, um, yeah. Um, so another way, like you can be emotionally secure presence for your family is understanding the world. So this kind of, we were talking about this too, just being genuinely interested in terms of your family, your wife, your kids, activities, concerns, their friends. Show up for the events too. Like that's important too. I see a lot of people, and people are busy, right? People work, people do things, but try to, like, where you can, show up to the events for your kids where you can, like, for them. Like, I understand, like, people have to make money, people have to, in order to pay bills, to be able to live life, you have to work. But the opportunities that you have, like, make sure that you try to, show up for your kids, like show up to those events. Because honestly, I feel like those things mean the most to them. You see so many kids, like, they don't have any parents, like, and I personally have friends like this, and I've had partners like this that told me, like, they grew up in households where, like, their parents, like, had the opportunities to show up to events like that they were doing. Like, if they had the opportunities, it could be whatever they did in school, and they didn't show up, and that affected them. Their parents had an opportunity to show up, and they just didn't. They stayed home.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced that, so I can definitely resonate with that feeling. You know what I mean? And that leaves a lasting impression on a kid for real.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it. I've seen people whose parents have never told them they love them. I've literally seen people whose parents have never told them they're proud of them. And it always almost seems like they're fighting for that parent's affection throughout their life because of that. And at least that spills into relationships, friendships, whatever. It's like you're almost always seeking that validation from friends, your partner. For sure, it leaks out into adulthood. So just showing up for your kids, and your wife, just understanding their world, being genuinely interested in what's going on in their world. Leading with clear values as well. That's a big one. Having a clear set of values. So, example, honesty, kindness, and resilience. Leading as a man with clear values that guide your decisions, your actions. It kind of helps you provide that moral compass for you, for your whole family, your wife, your kids. And there was something I actually had. This was, I think, I don't know if this was in the book, The Man, the Moment Demands, that Jason Wilson had talked about, but I think it was servant leadership. That's a thing that a lot of men, we're technically, we lead by example. So we are like servants to our household. Some men will be like, I'm not a servant to my family. Like, they take it, me and Rich were actually talking about this. They take it the wrong way. They're like, I'm not a servant. I'm not this. Like, I don't serve. It's like, technically you do. You serve, like, you know what I mean? You're a servant leader to your household. You as a man you lead by example.
For sure. Yeah, you lead by example, and it's your responsibility. You know what I mean? Especially for the men who are believers, it is to serve. That's what leadership is. It's not this glamorous title of a dictator. It's like, no, a leader serves.
Yep. You can look up it as a way as, like, they roll their sleeves up. They don't just sit there on, like, an ivory tower and just make demands, and that's not a leader. That's, like you said, that's a dictator. There's a difference. A leader, they set the tone by the example of how they carry themselves. You can't expect your wife and children to act a certain way, but meanwhile, as a man, you don't carry yourself that way. You know what I mean? You can't expect, certain things and then just not lead your own life the same way. It doesn't work like that. And if you do expect those things, that's going to cause resentment on the other end, because you're not carrying yourself that way.
Yeah.
And then this was the final part I had here. It was just in terms of action. This is on the emotional side. Just so honestly, so, like, in terms of your wife, support your wife. So, like, a stable family is going to require a strong partnership. Support your wife's goals. Communicate openly with her. And just present a united front in terms of parenting decisions. I think that's a big thing too. I see it with a lot of people, unfortunately, that are, they had a child with somebody, but they're not together anymore, right? You see a lot of miscommunication in terms of, for single parents, in terms of how they raise their child. So if they're not in the same household, a lot of times, one parent might, model certain behavior and another parent model the other. And unfortunately, it can cause a lot of disruption with the child, right? Because they're not on the same page in terms of how they're raising their child. So I think that's really important. Consistency showing like consistency to your child, being on the same page. I know that's tough for a lot of single parents.
Yeah, it can be tough, especially in split households. You know what I mean? Where you're, the kids are going back and forth. Because it can be challenging to be in alignment. I see that a lot with some of the men that I work with, and it's one of those things where, as adults, you have to find a way to get on the same page, even if you both don't agree with each other. You have to think about what is the best model for our children or our child. And then it's like, all right, let's just model that. Like, I know this is what you do at your home. This is what I do at mine. We don't see eye to eye, but what's best for our child mutually? And let's do that. And that's tough, man. Like I said, that's tough. Especially if you're separated, it's tough. It can be difficult if you didn't have the right partner and y'all ended up having a child. It could be a lot, but it's worth at least, putting the effort there for the sake of the child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's tough because you can't control how someone else acts, right? As an adult, you can't control it. One of my boys, I know women deal with it too, with the father of their children, but one of my boys, he lives in Florida. He was on this podcast a few weeks back, and his oldest is here in Philly. Like this is where he grew up, and he just more than ever, he's like, he hates to see the change in him. He wanted to take him to Florida with him, but he wanted to stay here with his mother and everything. But a lot of it is it's pettiness. You know what I mean? It's just how he'll raise. He had spoken about this on the podcast too. Is just more so like it's just inconsistency. Like how his son knows, like if he goes to Florida with him, he's like, hey, certain things aren't going to be tolerated here. But he's like, he said he hates to just see the change in him, the disrespect in him and stuff. Like he's like, man, he's like, as soon as I wanted him to come here with me, but obviously they both have that child. It's not so easy. Like he moved with his wife, and he has other kids too, all with his wife, and then he has his oldest with his ex, and it's like it's tough, man. You know what I mean? It's tough. I see it personally, like in people I know that have kids from split households. It's tough.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely challenging. That's where maturity has to come in, though. You have to really look at what the best for your child is, right? It's like, but the unfortunate reality is you can't control how someone else is going to act either, an adult. So
no, you can't. You just have to control how you react and how you show up, and remember that the child is watching all of this, whether you think they are or not.
Yep. So it's exactly, you can just control what you can control, and the things that are outside of your control, you can just, you leave the rest to God. You know what I mean? And he's going to, you control what you can control. That's it. The physical things I'll just run through real quick, just providing a secure environment I had, establishing routines, and then prioritizing self-care for yourself too. That's what we had talked about, making sure that you prioritize that self-care. When you do that, you're going to be able to show up as your best self. When you don't do that, you're not going to be able to show up as your best self. And, your wife and your kids, they see that. That's the important part of it, man. I think I covered everything that I really had in my notes here. So we were just kind of chatting about it. But I guess, before we wrap up or anything like that, I was just gonna say, your experience as like a husband and a father, man, like did it definitely like shape you? Like, I don't know, like most people, a few people I know, like most men I know, like once they had like their children and they got married, like it kind of just shaped them for the better. Like, would you say like, I guess fatherhood and then like, marriage to finding your partner, has it shaped you as a man like differently?
Yeah, it shapes you if you allow it to. Marriage is definitely, for me, it's like the most intense. It's like having an intense coach. It's like having a coach with you all the time. It's a mirror, just like having a child, I believe, it's a mirror of who you are. My son, he exposed so much in me that I thought was healed already. You know what I mean? I was like, dang, I didn't even realize I still was dealing with this. It's helped me to develop patience in a way that I never had before. And even with my wife, it is this reflection of, how you treat her is how you typically want God to treat you. So it's like, Nate, this is how you need to show up for her. And it's tough because she challenges me. You know what I mean? And it's out of love, but you got to have those moments. And for me, it is all this like training ground in my house, which is amazing because I'm growing as a man because of it. But you have to allow yourself to grow because you can fight against it. You can have this toxic mindset where you feel like they're there to serve you or she's there to do this. And it's like, man, if you allow yourself to be coached in that marriage, it can be transformational for you as a man. And that's where I'm at now. It's like, okay, she's one of my coaches. I see it as that.
Man, that's deep, and that's a fantastic way to kind of wrap this up here, man. That's powerful. Yeah, I think a lot of men, right? Like we get caught up in, I'm the leader, I do this, but it's a lot of that is speaking from pride and ego. When we can have that openness to look at it that way, that's a great way to look at it. That when your wife challenges you, it's like you're always being coached, right? And we from an outside perspective, it's easier said than done. Obviously, in the moment, especially if like you're frustrated, like your wife challenges you, it's you have to recognize what it ultimately is. But honestly, that's what you want, I think, out of a marriage. You want a marriage that's gonna challenge you in good ways, like a healthy way. Like you want to be able to challenge each other so you guys can grow together. Like that's important. That's really, really important. So I love that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. And like I said, not even when she just challenges me, but it challenges me inadvertently to show up for her in ways that I didn't know I could, to love unconditionally, to be there through sickness and through health. You know what I mean? To go through the tough times and the tough conversations and be willing to go back and apologize. Like it's
Yeah,
challenging me in all of those areas, even if she's not verbally being like, hey, can you do this? Or, you're acting this way. It's like, yo, it's just challenging me to show up every day and choose her.
I love that, man. That's so true, man. It's just yeah, it's just that's important. Like it's like you said, it teaches us about ourselves like more. Like it kind of brings out qualities that we may not have thought we had. Especially like in terms of like patience and different other areas too. But just yeah, man, that's so important. I just felt like I wanted to ask that before we wrapped up here tonight, man. But is there anything else before we end here tonight that you want to add?
I would just say for the men that are going to tune in at some point or are watching, just realize you're worthy. Realize that your mental health is critical. I know it's one of those things where maybe it's not normalized around you or people aren't talking too much about it, but without it, man, it makes everything so much more hard, so much more difficult, man. And if you truly care about the people you love, it's something you will prioritize because it can get passed down. You know what I mean? The habits that come from it. And I believe this too. If you're the person that if you're the one who's aware of the issues that are going on, I believe it's your responsibility to address the issues as well. And you do that by prioritizing yourself and caring for yourself.
That's real. That's real. Yeah, that's ultimately that's how it is. It's like it's not selfish. It's actually the opposite. It's by you pouring into you. Like I said, you could show up as your best self, and you can be able to pour into your wife, your kids, your family, your friend, your community. You show up as your best self when you take care of yourself. That's mentally,
Mhm.
physically, all of that.
1000%. Yep.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I'm just gonna check on Facebook, make sure that because I have to read out. Yeah, we actually have 6 comments on here. Let me thanks, Candace, for writing in. She said men don't want to acknowledge the trauma that has formed the behavior. Where I know she's a single mother too. Candace been on here a couple of times. Shout out to you, Candace. I appreciate you. She said men don't want to acknowledge the trauma that has formed the behavior where they're not emotionally available. It's very sad. I struggle with listening first and then responding a lot of times. God is working in me. And she said, yeah, absolutely. It's a process, right? Like we all have things that we can improve and learn from. That's why, like when Nate was saying that being an advocate for therapy, I say no matter what you're going through in life, you could think you have your whole life figured out. You could be in the best shape of your life. You could be doing extremely well financially. You could have a close relationship with God, and you could have close relationships with and you could be really in tune with all the relationships in your life, your wife, your kids, all that. I still think you can always improve yourself. I think that therapy can be good for anybody. I'll always advocate for it. I'll never try to force it on anybody, but I will always advocate for it.
Yeah, it's a huge step in the right direction. And you got to remember for men, for most of us, it's not something that was normalized. It's not something that we get applauded for or acknowledged for. And a lot of men, we operate from a performative space, and it's starting to be a thing where more men are seeking the help they need because they're realizing the damage that is causing and a ripple effect if they don't heal.
Right. We're not
So we
breaking
need
any
a
shit.
little grace for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not breaking those generational curses if we're not healing. So that's important, man. Yeah, man, that's all I really have for tonight, man. If you want, I can drop your links down here if any of the like for any of your stuff I can put in the chat here for anybody if you want to put prayer. You said Prayer Warriors Global, right? I think that's the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's your group. I'm gonna put that in the chat here. I'm just gonna throw it on the screen so people can check it out. And what time do you guys run? You guys are you guys 6:30 to or 6 to 9:30?
Roughly 6:30 to like 9:30, 10.
Okay. Yeah, guys, so hop on. I honestly, I've been saying for a minute, man, I gotta hop on too. So, are you guys still doing all throughout the week with the holiday and everything? Still tomorrow with Thanksgiving, Friday, all throughout the week, the rest of the week.
Yeah, we don't take off.
Cool. I like that,
Don't
man.
take off. Brothers call in on all holidays, Monday through Friday. No matter what's going on, we on. So it's gonna be brothers on tomorrow. We're gonna switch up the flow a little bit, but it's gonna be a dope call.
Man, I love that. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to tap in with you, man. And then you have Worthy by Design too, right? Is that your other?
So that's something I'm currently building out right now. Hasn't been announced or anything like that, but we're building something out as I prepare for my yearly summit in Philly, which is as of right now, we have May 16th as our date.
Okay, cool. Guys, if you want to check out any of Nate's content too, because he's always posting some gems on any of the men out there, or women too. Feel free to check it out. I actually have I think I have your handle. I do. I have it in the promotion. So for your Instagram and for your Facebook. So guys, you can check Nate out on Instagram, Facebook. Give him a follow if you want to check out any of his content, anything like that. But I just want to say first and foremost, too, man, to wrap this up, I appreciate you taking the time. I know the holidays, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. We usually probably a lot of times have more viewers. I do know it's the night before Thanksgiving, so even if people can't watch live stream tonight, I know people will watch the replay will always be there, so people can check it out after the fact. But I just appreciate you taking the time, brother, to come on here tonight and join.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate the invite, and I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah, man. Likewise. I'll definitely tap in with you on this Prayer Warriors Global, man. We'll definitely talk and keep in touch, man.
Yes, sir, man. Hope to hear you on there, and tap in when you can, man. Love you, bro, and keep up the great work.
Absolutely, brother. Just want to wish you you and your family too a happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving. Yes,
sir. Same to y'all. Enjoy some food, man.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Some football, some food. Let's enjoy it.
Word.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. All right, brother. Have a good night.
All right, man. You have a good one.
Take care. Also, I just want to wish everybody else out there too, before I hop off here. That was Nate, first time on here. To all of you out there, have a happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving. If you're driving, please be safe. Love y'all. We'll see you next week for episode 235. Have a great weekend and a great holiday, guys.